Now, second earnings season so far hasn't been great. It's almost over. And according to Reuters, the majority of S&P 500 companies' aggregate profits increased 1.6%. Revenues dropped around 3.4%. Companies have been able to increase earnings per share, but mostly due to some creative cost cutting. Well, for his take on Friday's jobs report, we're joined by John Hermann, the director of the U.S. rate strategies for Mitsubishi UFJ Securities. John, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle. Great to be with you.
So, John, that jobs report, good, but not great. Would you agree?
Yes. I think in the big picture, if we look back over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been averaging right around 200,000 or a little bit better in jobs. This report is consistent with that. So as you're mentioning, we would love to see, 250, 260,000 jobs. But as we were previewing to our clients, we just didn't see it possible. Our forecast actually was very, very close to the outcome. So what we saw was we saw good broad-based gains. We saw throughout many sectors, we saw solid broad-based gains.
Well, John, according to your projections, you're concerned that there'll be fewer jobs created this year overall than there were last year.
Yeah, last year, the year 2014, I think, Michelle, is going to look like the strongest year possibly of this decade. So we did last year achieve 260,000 jobs per month on average. This year, I think, as you're just highlighting, I think we're going to decelerate towards around 220,000. There's a slight chance that it's a little bit softer than that, but I think right around 220,000.
All right, John, in terms of job sectors, some disappointments, particularly in motor vehicle jobs. What were the other job sectors that didn't see such solid gains?
Well, as you're suggesting, we had what's called an early start to the retooling time period in autos, and then we recalled the workers very soon after the July 4th holiday weekend. And motor vehicles are ramping up production, so we're expecting to see just a little bit more gain in the motor vehicle payrolls, but that was a touch on the soft side. We were also just a little bit disappointed by the construction payrolls. They're only gained 6,000. And as you know, this part of what's people's expectations of this recovery is that housing will pick up, and many of the signals we're seeing are picking up, but we just are getting still sort of a sluggish growth rate in the construction jobs, unfortunately.
Well, John, it's a Friday. Let's keep it positive. On the upside, the economy is creating jobs in the financial, securities, and investment industries. What are some of the other bright spots? Which sectors are seeing growth?
Okay, so the other bright spots, as you're mentioning, so we have finance, that looks pretty good. Manufacturing in general was more resilient than we were expecting. We continue to see these jobs, as you and I have discussed before, like leisure, hospitality, retail jobs doing well, but they're lower wage, lower skill. But also what we also saw was decent growth in what we call professional services area, which are very high-skilled, high-paying jobs. We also saw them in education and healthcare, which are also fairly high-paying jobs as well in the United States. So we had a broad mix of top-end gains and sort of lower-skill gains. So we had a broad mix, and in general, as you're suggesting, it seems to be a report that's good enough to satisfy the Federal Reserve's criteria for raising rates this year, and possibly in September.
John, the employment rate stayed at the same level, 5.3%. That's its lowest point since April of 2008. That is considered near full employment. So, as we said, the big question is, what does this all mean for liftoff? Do you expect the Fed to start raising rates, and as soon as September now?
Okay, so you and I have had this discussion back and forth all year. So the unemployment rate mathematically was 5.26, so almost 5.25. And the Fed's target is 5.1. That's their longer-term target. So they were only within 15 basis points. That means within about 3 months or so, we should be, according to our models, we should be at this 5.1% level. And once you're at that level, it seems very unrealistic that the Fed is going to sit and wait any longer. So that would be the easiest thing to, but as you're suggesting, we've been telling clients we think the risks are higher than what the market's weighing them at 50, 55%. We think they're higher than that, maybe 75% they go in September.
75%.
Definitely. or
Well,
and possibly
another
higher.
factor that the Fed has been looking out for, John, is wage growth. That's another target that they have, and wage growth has been lackluster. That's why there's all this talk of an improving economy, but Americans, they don't really seem to be feeling it. Hourly earnings on average rose 2.1%. The Fed wants that closer to 3.5%. What does this mean for
Yes.
liftoff, and why are we so stagnant on wage increases?
Part of the things that's holding back the wage growth is, I think some of it's structural, because what happens is this: there's something called the quit ratio, and that's when other businesses try to lure away workers from one company and bring them to another, and they lure them away with higher wages or a higher incentive. Incentive basket, something like that. So we are getting to that area where we start to pick up, but it's been more gradual this cycle than in any previous cycle in the last 40 years. So that's most likely due to the fact that the recovery is still only growing about 2 to 2.5% a year, and we just continue that trend. It's frustrating, but we just continue.
Frustrating indeed. But thank you for your time, John Hermann, Director of U.S. Rate Strategies for Mitsubishi
Thank you, Michelle.
UFJ Securities. Thanks, John. Well,